Have you ever had that experience, maybe late at night, where you feel this profound need to confess something, a deep-seated anxiety or a fear you haven't even told your closest friends?
Hmm.
You type it out, maybe into an anonymous chat room or a private forum. You hit send, and for a fleeting moment, you truly recognized. You feel seen.
It's a powerful, almost chemical relief. But then you close the laptop and you realize that the profound honesty you just experienced didn't actually lead to connection.
Right.
The silence of the room, paradoxically, feels heavier than it did when you started typing. That emotional weight is the core tension we are diving into today.
Absolutely. This is what the sources call the loneliness paradox.
Yeah.
And think about it. We have built the single most sophisticated communication network in human history.
Instant sharing with millions.
And yet consistently, over the last 50 years, reported rates of loneliness have doubled.
Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the source material we have on digital honesty and the intimacy gap. We really have to look beyond the surface, past the simple act of sharing, to determine the complex psychological, cognitive, and even biological reasons why digital openness so often fails to reliably translate into lasting, genuine connection.
And we're pulling together a stack of research that spans decades, right? We're synthesizing excerpts from the early days of anonymous chat rooms in the 2000s.
All the way through the chaotic rise of social media in the 2010s.
And then up to the newest and perhaps most intimate frontier, the 2025 AI listener.
To understand the gap, we have to start with the initial promise, the appeal of those early forums. It wasn't an accident. They were perfectly designed to overcome the friction of real-world social interaction.
So they offered freedom, anonymity.
And above all, dialogue without immediate social consequence or judgment.
Right. You had total control over disclosure. You could invent a new identity, share exactly what you wanted.
And disconnect the moment it got awkward.
This digital freedom essentially provided a robust psychological safety net. And for millions of people carrying secrets, that was, an irresistible relief.
That safety net is what provides the initial surge of honesty. The mechanism was first scientifically labeled by John Suler back in 2004. He called it the online disinhibition effect.
So the disinhibition effect, that means that since I can't see the immediate shock or pity on your face,
Yeah.
and because I don't have to worry about this confession following me into my real-world social life, that deep internal filter, that self-censorship we carry around, just temporarily relaxes.
Precisely. And the data from that era vividly captures the power of this effect. Look at the Witty study from 2002, which surveyed 320 people.
And it was specifically on their willingness to discuss traditionally taboo topics,
Yeah.
sexuality, serious relationship struggles, deep health fears.
Exactly. And here's the finding that just immediately grabs you. They found that people were 85% likely to discuss these difficult topics in an online chat environment.
85%, that's huge.
But when asked about discussing those same topics face-to-face with a friend,
The number had to have dropped.
it plummeted to just 35%. That gap tells us something profound about the weight we're all carrying offline. People have an immense need to voice their truths, and the digital safety net allows them to do it.
They feel validated, heard. They experience a temporary sense of relief.
But here is the sharp pivot in the research. Relief and openness aren't the same thing as connection or intimacy.
So the honesty is there, but the intimacy isn't built. Why does that happen? Why does this initial outpouring of truth fail to cement a lasting bond?
Well, it's a classic case of short-term gain leading to a long-term deficit. Peter, Valkenburg, and Schouten investigated this back in 2005.
Okay.
They confirmed that online self-disclosure does increase temporary feelings of closeness, that feeling of being validated right now, but they found it rarely translates into lasting, meaningful intimacy.
I see. So that initial high wears off fast. Why? Because the relationship foundation, the shared context, the nonverbal cues, it was never there to reinforce it.
That's one layer, but another, more concerning finding emerged, suggesting that these spaces weren't just neutral tools, they were being used as an emotional crutch.
You're talking about the Morahan, Martin, and Schumacher research from 2003?
That's the one. They found that frequent chat users reported significantly higher levels of loneliness and social anxiety than people who only chatted occasionally.
That's a crucial distinction. It suggests that it's not necessarily the chat room causing the loneliness,
Right.
but rather that lonely people are actively seeking it out to compensate for something missing offline.
Right.
Are the sources suggesting this choice is actively detrimental?
They certainly highlight the risk of dependency. This tendency became codified in 2007, with Kaplan's work introducing the preference for online social interaction.
Or the POSI scale, a great acronym for the learner, POSI.
Exactly. And higher POSI scores, meaning you consciously prefer the control and ease of online social interaction, were consistently, across every demographic, correlated with poorer offline social support networks.
So the pattern is stark. The digital space promotes easy honesty, but for many, it functions as a compensating mechanism that only amplifies feelings of real-world isolation.
It's like preferring a digital shortcut over the messy, difficult reality of walking the full path of friendship.
That makes the paradox even sharper. If I'm sharing my deepest truth, why am I still walking away feeling isolated? We need to drill down into the specific mechanics. Why is the gap between honesty and intimacy so persistent?
Because the gap is structural. It's a deficit that operates simultaneously on 4 distinct levels: psychological, cognitive, biological, and social.
Let's start with the hard science first. If the psychology allows the openness, is there something physically stopping the bond from forming? The chemical difference.
Absolutely. The neuroscience shows a clear distinction between a quick hit of validation and true bonding.
Right.
When you send a message, get a fast reply, or see a notification, you activate the dopamine reward system. It's satisfying. It's a quick digital hit that creates the illusion of closeness.
That instant gratification loop. It feels like connection, but it's just a reward mechanism being triggered.
It's a temporary rush, and it lacks substance. True, deep human bonding relies on a very different chemical entirely: oxytocin.
Often called the bonding hormone.
Exactly. Oxytocin is triggered by physical presence, eye contact, touch, shared laughter in the same room. Digital communication, especially text-based interaction, does not trigger that biological mechanism.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Without that chemical reinforcement, the connection can't really deepen. And if we extend that to the psychological layer, we find the same problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reduced social risk makes honesty easy, but it comes at a cost.
Yes, you can drop a truth bomb and run, but that variability removes the necessary conditions for empathy. The lack of physical cues, facial expressions, tone, subtle shifts in posture means you might read my painful words, but you can't fully process my emotional state.
The feeling of being truly felt by another person requires processing those cues.
Right.
It's the difference between reading the words "I'm sad" and watching someone's eyes well up. One is a fast transmission of information, the other requires genuine, messy vulnerability on both sides to process.
The exchange feels incomplete because the mirror neuron systems aren't engaged, which leads directly into the cognitive problem.
Which is about how our brains process information in this fragmented environment.
Yes, Nicholas Carr observed this phenomenon back in 2010. Our online habits, the constant scrolling, the scanning for keywords, train us away from deep, sustained thought.
We train ourselves to skim rather than absorb.
Exactly. This cognitive style is optimized for quick emotional expression venting, but it actively works against the sustained attention required for true emotional processing.
So understanding a complex personal truth requires sitting with an idea for several minutes, asking clarifying questions, letting the weight of the emotions sink in.
But if we're constantly scanning for the next notification or quickly typing a reply, we never achieve that necessary mental friction.
We're trading emotional depth for cognitive speed. And finally, the social structure itself reinforces the isolation.
That's the mechanism of weak ties. Chat rooms and large forums are structurally designed for breadth over depth. They encourage the formation of weak ties.
Connections that are great for transactional support, like getting information or venting about a minor irritation. They offer temporary, low-stakes relief.
But they don't provide the comprehensive, high-stakes emotional support you need when life truly falls apart.
Right.
Precisely. That profound relief from venting rarely converts into a strong tie relationship that shows up with soup when you're sick, or helps you move houses. Without those shared real-world investments, the connection just remains ephemeral.
So this multi-layered gap started with chat rooms 20 years ago, but it's still fundamentally defining our interactions today. Let's trace how this concept evolved.
In the 2000s, anonymity was the default in places like Yahoo, Chat, and there was a relatively clear separation between your online life and your real life.
Then the 2010s arrived, and smartphones dissolved those boundaries entirely.
Yeah.
We saw mass self-disclosure on personalized platforms like Discord and WhatsApp.
Where we thought we were connecting deeply because we were using our real names.
Yet the core loneliness persisted and even intensified for some.
Which brings us to the most fascinating and perhaps most alarming current iteration. 2025, the age of the AI listener.
We're talking about entities like Replica, Wobot, other emotional support AI.
which promised 204/7 availability, instant response, and crucially, absolute zero judgment.
The ultimate tireless sounding board. But this raises the critical question for the learner. Are we simply automating the paradox? Are we automating loneliness?
It's a very real concern. Recent research published in Frontiers in Psychology in 2024 has shown that people absolutely form emotional attachments to these digital entities. The AI companion is highly effective at reducing subjective feelings of loneliness. You feel less lonely right now when you interact with it.
And if you've used one of these, you know how incredibly soothing that instant, non-judgmental response can be. But what does the research say about the long-term trade-off?
This is the concerning element. While the AI provides instant relief, it potentially decreases the motivation to seek out messy human connection. If I have a perfect, tireless listener available instantly and they never challenge me, why would I bother with the high friction, sometimes difficult work of building a friendship with a person who might be tired or busy or disagree with me?
That's a profound finding. If the technology is making it easier to communicate, but simultaneously reducing our motivation to connect with other people.
The loneliness paradox is fundamentally evolving into something more insidious. It's not just a gap, it's a substitution.
So we need to shift from identifying the structural problems to adopting intentional strategies. How can we ensure our digital spaces support real connection instead of replacing it?
Okay, let's look at the solutions the sources outline for us.
Right, what does this all mean for us as users and for the platforms themselves?
Well, the platforms must evolve their design based on the trust factor. Since trust requires consistency, they should encourage the continuity of identity-stable usernames, persistent community groups.
To help users build the social foundation necessary for trust.
We're also seeing structured emotional check-ins being integrated, recognizing that just having a blank text box isn't sufficient for emotional depth.
And for us as users, the focus must be on intentionality. We can use that initial online openness as a powerful gateway to deeper relationships. The chat should be seen as the introduction, not the destination. Start with the honest words online, move to the video call to engage the mirror neurons, and if possible, meet in person to trigger the oxytocin.
A critical piece of self-assessment is key to avoiding that compensatory behavior loop we discussed earlier. You have to ask yourself honestly, is your online use complementing your offline relationships, or is it actively replacing them?
That's a question.
If you find yourself consistently turning down in-person social opportunities in favor of the easier, lower-friction online interaction, that is a clear sign that you need to reassess your balance.
And finally, culturally, we need to introduce educational interventions, teaching what we might call digital empathy skills.
We have to recognize that online and offline interactions offer different, non-inferior benefits, provided they are used consciously and in balance.
At the end of the day, we just have to stop expecting technology to do the hard, messy, biologically demanding work of human relationships for us.
The technology is a tool, not a replacement for intimacy.
So, to synthesize this entire deep dive, the crucial takeaway from decades of research is that digital spaces drastically increase our ability to be honest, but they do not reliably increase intimacy.
Right.
They give us the freedom to speak our deepest truths, but they often fall short of providing the necessary biological and cognitive cues to make us feel truly heard and understood.
And we've established that loneliness is often bidirectional. People turn to these spaces when they feel isolated, seeking relief. But if they rely on the digital shortcut exclusively, avoiding the necessary friction of pursuing messy, vulnerable offline relationships, that reliance can actually amplify feelings of isolation over time.
It leaves us with a profound dilemma that applies whether you're typing into an anonymous forum or confiding in an AI listener. We have to constantly ask ourselves, are we truly sharing ourselves and building bonds?
Or are we simply broadcasting our existing loneliness into a perfectly responsive void?
The sources leave us with a stark concluding reflection that is worth mulling over long after this deep dive is complete.
The ongoing paradox remains the dilemma of truth without touch. Does digital honesty, stripped of all the physical, biological, and cognitive cues of real presence, have a natural limit on how deeply it can sustain the human spirit? Something for you to explore on your own.